One thing I did the night before was run through the menu system and get used to where everything was. And that was a really good idea because I think if somebody handed you the camera right away and said, "Hey, go shoot," you'd have some issues. You'd have to sit there for 30 or 40 minutes to really get used to the menus. And I say that as a Sony fan. I'm shooting on one right now talking to you, and I own a couple other ones. And I think the biggest issue anybody could have is just with the menus, just finding things. But once you find things, it's pretty easy. I had a really easy time navigating what I needed to shoot and get the shots that I needed to. There was no hardware limitation there. There was no um, extremely difficult setting I needed to find. It just took a little bit of tinkering up front. Between the 2 cameras, obviously the Z90 is just point and shoot pretty much. It's a handy cam that has really nice specs. So, besides setting up a color profile, that one is just turn on and press record. Um, the FS5 takes more to get going just because it's got more attachments, it's capable of a lot more, but it was really easy to use during the event because, um, maybe because of the size actually. Either if you're shooting on a DSLR, even though they're really compact, um, you can move them around quite a bit, and it can make for some unstable footage. But because the FS5 Mark II had the built-in handle with all the buttons on it, and you could get a good grip underneath it, you didn't really need a gimbal per se, or you didn't need some shoulder rig. And so I was able to run around the event and freehand it and get honestly really stable shots compared to using another camera. Tough to say. I don't feel like the cameras are feature shy at all. They've got more than most people are going to ever use. Um, but again, maybe going back to my first comment, I think the menu system could use a little tweaking. And it's not even just these two cameras, but the Alpha series, the A6500, the A7R2, those things. It's a little tough to navigate sometimes, and when you really want a shot, you wanna spend as little time as possible fumbling with options before you can shoot, and there's probably a couple ways to retool the menu to get to those things quicker, or maybe, modify some of the hardware buttons to help you do that. Um, so, yeah, maybe that's more of a software thing than a hardware feature thing, but I think any any tweaks there would be great just to keep things moving. Again, Z90 is just point and shoot, and it's got 4K capability, and that is probably one of the easiest solutions out there if you're looking for just run and gun easy content. You don't want to think about it too much and still want it to look really good. The power zoom can reach further than necessary, to be honest. Um, and the FS5, you can say the same thing, but you have to be a little more deliberate. I think the jump from the Z90 or Alpha series cameras to the FS5 is one that you have to take into account. It's a more powerful camera, but it doesn't compensate quite as much for user error. So, for example, probably my fault, maybe is a lack of experience with the camera, but I used a color profile uh, along with S-Log to, get the most out of the dynamic range. But for whatever reason, um, that color profile and S-Log weren't jiving too well, and I got a bunch of noisy shots. So um, in hindsight, and when I shot things later, I switched the color profile, and everything looked amazing. So like I say, it doesn't compensate quite as much for user error. So I think if you're willing to get comfortable and the shot quality, if that's something you really want to achieve, the FS5 is worth going for. You just have to commit to learning a bit and being really deliberate about what you want to shoot and how you want it to look before you shoot it. But it's definitely the next jump. It's definitely the next jump before you start getting into the baby Hollywood level equipment. And I I don't think there's an application that the camera couldn't really exceed in. So it's impressive. At times it's intimidating, but I mean, it was my first go with it, and uh, we loved it. I thought for the event it was great because of run and gun, and the I have to say the optical stabilization in the lens was fantastic because the camera doesn't have any, but the lens stayed smooth. It wasn't shaking much, even when you're all the way zoomed in. It was working great. So yeah, I had a really good time with it, and I would definitely use it again.